right, we're back. Of course, once again, we had all the good conversation while we're off camera. So let me ask you the question that you faced a few months ago, 18 months ago, and then talk about it. What do you do? What would you do? And what do you do if you fail? And I mean fail. You're done.
Yeah, that question was posed to me about 18 months ago, maybe a little longer, maybe 24 months ago. And my answer at the time was, I can't fail. I won't fail. That's just, I'm not going to fail. But then the person that asked me that question said, no, catastrophic failure. Everything falls apart and you fail. And that question haunted me because I had no answer for that other than, what are you talking about? I'm not going to fail. I can't fail. And so I've really worked hard to figure out the answer to that question. And, today, I think that if nobody wants to fail, but if we were to fail today, I think that, I've got faith, I've got my family, I've got a good reputation in the community. I don't think that failure just erases me from the planet. Does it suck? Yes. But, the David Mathis 24 months ago, not being able to answer that question is not, it's not healthy, because failure is possible in everything that we do. I mean, you said a minute ago, failing daily helps try to, if you think about that, it helps you with that catastrophic failure. But sometimes, and I mentioned it while we were on the break, is that, just imagine if you had spent your whole career building a company and you were very proud of the work that you had at USAID, and then you get the phone call that, hey, you're done. And so, what do you do? And if you don't have that foundation of I'll be okay, or the foundation from a faith perspective or a family perspective, or even, close mentors and a close community, that can be catastrophic personally. But today, and my wife laughs when I say it, but today, if I have to go get a job at Home Depot, I can be successful at Home Depot as long as I've got a well-grounded soul and a well-grounded heart. So, my wife laughs and says Home Depot would probably be the last place that I would get a job because I struggle to screw in a light bulb. But it is, I think if I had to be a Walmart greeter, I could certainly do that and would enjoy it. But and I think I'd be really good at it. But it's just preparing for, not necessarily preparing for failure, but preparing yourself for what if. And it's not fun to talk about. It's not fun to think through the what ifs, but that question was really a life-changing question for me. And so it's put a different perspective on the day-to-day, and the thinking that I do. We still try to do our best, and we're going to pursue excellence in all that we do. But if failure is a possibility, and it always is, nothing is guaranteed. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. And so, how do we handle that, and how do we prepare ourselves for that, I think is important.
Wait, don't go away. Not just yet. There's a bunch of links down below. You can see topics. If you're short on time, just go through that and pick some of the topics you're interested in and enjoy the rest of the video. So, is it okay if I go kind of off topic for a second?
I'm with you, man. Yeah, you're driving.
This is not on the agenda. We don't have to keep it. But what do you, have you thought about what if you're not here tomorrow, both for your company and your family? Have you got, I don't want your individual, don't show me your will. I'm just curious. Yeah. Have you thought about what happens? Because there's a lot, I'm sure, riding on you right now.
Yeah, that thinking through those kind of things, I think, are prudent. And everybody has, well, I say everybody has, I might be taking that for granted. We have contingency plans here. We know that there is the contingency plan from an organizational, running the organization on day to day. I don't like to say if I get hit by a truck. What I'd rather say is if I win the lottery and then I disappear. But something happens to me, crossing the street today. Am I as prepared as I need to be from you mentioned will and living will and all of those things? Probably not as well as I should be. because we put that off. We have power out. We just had tornadoes here yesterday, and we've got power out. And somebody said, man, every time I go to buy a generator, I always put it off until a storm hits. And then I'm like, man, I wish I'd have bought that generator. And I think that the same thing happens when you start thinking about, am I going to be around? And so pouring into my family as best I can. I still am not perfect at doing that, and I wish my wife was sitting here because she would be shaking her head that I'm not perfect at that. But I'm making the effort to do that and preparing that, hey, we're all not going to be here forever, and the business may or may not be here forever. So what is your foundation? And it's a deeper thinking and a deeper process of, kind of analyzing that internally. But I will say that for me, faith has been a big part of that, to where I know who I am. I'm not defined by how much money I've got in the bank account or the success that I have with the organization. And I think when you let go of that, it really begins to open the aperture up of bringing success into the picture a lot more too, because now I'm not driving a square peg through a round hole. I'm looking at things more holistic and globally. And I just think when you don't put all your eggs in the basket of I have to be successful, then it gives you a certain amount of freedom to be able to make decisions differently, or to whether or not somebody wants to comment on my leadership style or comment on the decisions that we're making. It begins to become less important to me.
Do you have a specific yeah, no, that's good. Do you have a specific, like, for your company itself? Do people know, and do people know who's in charge tomorrow if something should happen?
Probably not as well as they should, Bill. I think that intuitively the org chart survives without me. I'm not in the middle of everything. To where, if I were to, again, get hit by a truck tomorrow, the company still continues to operate, and it's, and so, I that's probably something that I do need to work on is that what if something happens, then this, and make sure that the team understands that. And as I'm talking about that, I'm actually thinking to myself, I think that they would know, but maybe they don't. And so that's something that I need to work on, and something I need to be more clear on. You
never want to do it. I get it. You don't.
Yeah.
You don't
and it's like the generator. Am I going to put it off to where when it does happen, I'm going to wish I did. And so that now that's a new priority for me. So maybe now you're keeping me awake at night instead of me keeping you awake at night.
We should not do this too often.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, in light of the whole, like, that discussion, can you go back to, you started off when you told your story a little bit, how you bought into MartinFed and then you bought MartinFed. Do you want to tell a little, that's part of your entrepreneurship journey. Clearly you had a whole commercial banking entrepreneurial journey before that. So I just want to hear about it, but I'd like to hear about that part in particular. I'm curious.
Yeah, I've always wanted, and maybe it's entrepreneurial spirit, but I think that I've always wanted to be able to see the needle move, and it based off of the effort that I put into something. And so in a huge organization, as a small piece of a huge organization, sometimes that's harder to see. And so that attracted me to, helping start a small bank that was focused on service, and in having the ability to, when that needle moves, to know that's through our efforts, and you can actually see that. And so that entrepreneurial spirit was always an itch for me. And banking government contractors for as long as I have, I've seen some successes and I've seen some failures. And so I felt like that was something that was just a logical next step for me, is to try entrepreneurialism really on my own. And I kind of did it with training wheels and buying into a company that already had really, really good bones. Our founder, Corey Martin, did an unbelievable job of building a company that had, already had a top secret security clearance, already had an approved accounting system. So it had really good bones and really good structure that I could build on. And so, I just have the a huge amount of respect for those folks that go out and have an idea and start something from scratch. That's just, it is, doing it the way I did it is really, really hard. I can't imagine starting from zero. And even when we started, I've been involved in 2 startup banks here in Huntsville, and we still had a little bit of a head start with already having operations somewhere else. And so starting from scratch, I just have a lot of respect for. But for me, the entrepreneurial spirit was, I want to be able to make decisions that I benefit from the successes, and then I have to live with the mistakes. And that I wanted that responsibility, and I don't know why, but I felt driven enough, and I'd seen enough that I felt comfortable enough jumping in and trying to figure this thing out.
So I got to ask the question, because you come from a different perspective, having worked with all those GovCons.
Yeah.
Were there any trends for success versus failure? Maybe other than obvious people aren't good, but you know what I mean? Like any particular trends?
Yeah, I think that and there's probably of the, we had a portfolio of around 200 government contractors that we did business with, but over my career, it's probably, in the 1,000 range of looking at and dealing with government contractors. And a couple of the things that I took from that experience was leverage kills and cash is king, right? And so, if you are levered, in other words, your debt compared to your liabilities compared to your assets are either more than or equal to, but typically more than. A mistake happens, you have less room and flexibility, you have less safety net, and profitability is great. And in business, in banking, these companies that had high super growth, I've seen a couple of them that almost went out of business with growth because they didn't have enough capital, and they were too leveraged to be able to support the growth that was coming in. So they were wildly successful, and at the same time bordering on failure because they didn't have the cash to be able to support the growth that they had. And so, and we've not done it perfect here. Trust me, we've had to, our fair share of leverage and our fair share of cash flow issues, just like any other business. But knowing that, I think, really helps. And the other piece that I saw a lot of successful businesses is they treated the business like it a business rather than treating it as their own personal identity or their own personal ATM. And so, seeing people treat it, and it's really a difference between a lifestyle organization and a true growth oriented, formal business. But, I saw a lot of mistakes where people took for granted that, this is just my business and it's everything that I need right now, and I'm not going to work on it anymore. And the minute you stop working on the business, this, I mean, you atrophy. It's the same as, and so
you're growing or you're shrinking.
That's right. And so I've seen a lot of businesses that just didn't have that business development aspect finely tuned. They were very good technically, but they didn't have the business development, or they were very good technically and they had business development, but they didn't have the financial understanding of what was going on in their business. And so you gotta have it all. And if you can't do it, you got to bring people in that can. And so that's lesson learned there. I had a guy one time tell me that he took some advice from me that I don't remember giving, but he said that they waited 5 years until they took any money out of the business. And he said it really helped them to make sure that they could weather some of the storms that came, is because they had enough cash and they had enough availability on lines of credit and other things to survive some of the storms that they went through. He said had they started pulling cash out of the business sooner, they wouldn't have survived. And so I don't think that I necessarily told them don't take cash out of the business for 5 years, but I did tell them to watch your leverage. And, and it's easier said than done a lot of times too. So, like I said, we've not been perfect at that either, but just being aware of it, I think, is an advantage.
Have you got 1 or 2 ratios that you look at that you'd say those are the most important ones for a small business?
Yeah, small businesses, there's a thing called current ratio, and that's your current liabilities divided by current assets divided by your current liabilities. That's a sign of liquidity. And if that number is very close to one, or even below one, which means your liabilities are greater than your current debt, your current obligations are more than, your current obligations are more than your cash and accounts receivable and the other things that are on the current asset side. That's very dangerous. And so we watch that. We watch funded debt to EBITDA. And so earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and looking at funded debt. In other words, how much debt do we have and how much earnings do we have compared to that debt? And so watching that. And then just a simple debt to worth ratio of understanding that, hey, if I'm levered and my equity is 20 times less than, 20 times less than my liabilities, and the worst happens, I'm in a lot of trouble. And I used to talk to people about it wasn't my job as a banker to tell them how to run their business, but one of my jobs was to help them to be easily banked. And if you're easily banked, that means that you've got profitability and good margins, you've got low leverage, and you've got good liquidity, and you're paying attention to the details. And so I think that, from a financial perspective, that's a big deal.
You must start with if you're buying into a business, I guess, a debt to equity that isn't awesome, but then you can, there's a trend. I guess the trend is in the right direction, right? I guess that's the trick, because you're going to go, like when I bought IPTA in 2015, that was pretty much all with debt, right? So we empty the accounts out. I've just got debt. I'm pretty sure it wasn't an awesome debt to equity situation.
Right. Absolutely. Right.
Yes, that was not.
Yeah. So and that goes back to the whole leverage thing, and it's and quality of life. And so really paying attention to that, I think is important. And, and that doesn't mean all debt's bad. Heck, I'm a recovering banker. I think debt can be used in the right way. But always thinking, again, going back to mistakes, always thinking that you're always going to have this revenue, and you're always going to have the good times. Talk to any banker that was doing any kind of real estate in 2008. They'll tell you that sometimes it's you can't do anything about it. The market is what's going to control.
Well, I'll throw this in there relative to that. I definitely overpaid for IPT when I did it, and it was the best thing I ever did. Yeah. So you don't know. You don't really. You don't. It's all relative. Yeah, it is. Right. So you can turn a mistake into a. I don't know. It might have been a mistake. It might not have been, but it didn't turn out to be. Right. And of course, along the way, there were times I was pretty sure it was a mistake, but at the moment, it feels like it wasn't.
Yeah, it just depends on the day. That's right.
It depends on the day. Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's 100% true. All right. So how about what were some of your biggest challenges in leading your business, and how'd you overcome them? And I would assume some of those would have to do at least related to coming in, buying in, and maybe losing a big contract, right? That's a big challenge at the time. But anything else?
Yeah, I think that the importance of team building, I can't emphasize enough. And when I got here, we were really small. We were outsourcing almost every function of G&A. And we were outsourcing our contracts. We were outsourcing proposals. We were outsourcing our accounting. We were outsourcing our HR. And so, as we began to grow and started bringing those things in, you realize that, you bring in the wrong fit for the organization. You end up spending a lot more time trying to undo that decision and the mistakes and the issues that resulted from having the wrong people. And we're all going to make mistakes. Everybody's going to. If you're hiring enough people, especially in a senior leadership role, if you're going to make mistakes, period. You can't avoid making mistakes. I don't think I've ever talked to any business owner that said that they've always hired the right people all the time, the right way. But it's identifying that it's not a good fit and making a change when you need to make a change. And the times that we've had to make a change, and I on a personal level have loved every team member we've ever had. But sometimes getting from here to here, the team that got you there is not the same team that gets you from here to here. And so those are tough decisions that have got to be made, but if they're not made, you'll never get there. And so, I think that's important. And then when there's been a problem, I've never said I'm glad I waited. I've never said that. When there's been a problem, I've always said I wish I had handled that sooner. And so, that you've heard the phrase, fire fast, hire slow. I really believe that, but I don't believe that you fire just to fire. I think it's got to be fit, and there's got to be reasons, and they should never be surprised. And we haven't been perfect at that. We make mistakes just like everybody else, but I've never said when there was a problem that I'm glad I waited. Never.
Yeah. I want to talk about what people that get you here might not be the people to get you there. I've experienced it. I hear it all the time. I'm not even sure what question to ask you about. Can you just talk about that for a bit? What your experience was? It's one of the hardest things. I think it is
really hard.
I think it's the hardest thing that I experienced. It's brutal. It's brutal.
Yeah, it really is. And they're good people, and they may or may not be able to get you there, but it becomes to be pretty evident that they've got limits. And for me, it is identifying that. It. I think typically we know it before we know it. You know what I mean? I think we see it and we feel it, and it comes from just internal discussions, or maybe a problem occurred that you weren't expecting, and you kind of know. But they're the ones that got you here. And so that like you said, it's really, really hard. But I will tell you, and again, I kind of go back to the industry that I came from. I saw it time and time and time and time again, over and over and over. And it's not a secret that there's certain types of people that can get you from here to here, and then you've got to make a change. I've never talked to a business that's been wildly successful that hasn't had some change along the way. Now, I've seen some that have had the same team since they started until today, but that is much rarer than somebody that has to change the leadership and has to change some of the scalable areas, contracts, accounting, finance, even leadership and business development, all of those areas. You can only grow as much as maybe your weakest link, and so it's tough. But sometimes you've got to change folks out.
How did you decide to make decisions to insource as opposed to outsource your team? Like, what was I don't know, was it a financial
attention? It was attention. When you make the decision that you want to go fast, we had great consultants. And some of those consultants are still working with us. They're just not handling our outsourced. They're not handling everything themselves. But I think that consultants are fantastic, but they have other customers. They have other clients. And so, I wanted, people inside the organization to MartinFed to be 100% of their attention. And so bringing people in, and then also having somebody that wears the MartinFed badge versus a consultant, they're worried about their business. They obviously, good ones are worried about your business as well because they want to take care of their clients. But they're worried about their business. I want people that are here waking up every morning worried about our business. And so that was a little bit of the decision making. And there were only 3 of us when I got here. And I'm a people person. I just wanted more people, Bill, to talk to. But seriously, though, it's building synergy. You can't do it in a vacuum. And so, I think bringing people in and having those people internal is always better than external when the size is right, if that makes sense. Sometimes when you're smaller, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have a senior proposal writer when you've got 10 people. So you've got to understand where to bring those people in and when to do it. I'll also add this little extra. Here's an extra. is one of the mistakes that we made early on is when there were only 3 of us. And so when we started bringing people on and somebody said, hey, what's my title? I said, I don't care. I mean, we were so small, pick your title, right? But title begins to mean a little bit the bigger you get. And it's really hard to take a title away. And so that was a learning moment for me. And that I came out of the banking industry. And so titles were really important to people in the banking community. But I get into this industry and I'm like, man, titles don't matter. Well, they do, from an organizational and perspective and a roles and responsibilities perspective. And, you can also promote too early as well. And so we've kind of gone through all of that as we're going. And so you can promote somebody with a title, or you can promote somebody into a position. And it's really, really hard to bring them back to the position they should have been in. Nobody wants to go backwards. And so if you promote too early, the only place for them to go is out. And that's hard. And sometimes that's my fault, not the employee's fault. The employee wants to grow. It's my fault for putting them in a position to where they're not ready to be in that position. And then you can't go backwards.
Right. When you did that transition, let's just take everything other than delivery, people in the field, the contracts. Right. Did you have a priority of which I wanted to do HR first or BD or blah, blah, blah? Or was it more like, I've got the right person, so therefore let's go do that one next?
Yeah, it was for me, again, coming from my background, accounting was really important to know my numbers and know where we were, and to have somebody that could watch the dollars and cents and could make sure that, like I mentioned earlier, we had an approved accounting system to make sure that we are doing all the cost segregation and the DCAA compliant work. So that was important. And then honestly, one of the hires that we made early on is I knew this industry, but I didn't really know the industry. I knew B2B really well, but I didn't know B2G as well as I should have, or being honest, at all. And so I wanted to bring people in that knew that and knew how to do that. And so it was really deciding where the weaknesses are and what we needed to plug in to where I might have had a weakness here, to be able to plug that hole. And so it was, we messed up a lot. If you learn from your mistakes, I should be a genius, but that's just, it's just part of trial and error and figuring it out. Nobody's just going to give you an owner's manual when you walk in the door. And I didn't want that. I wanted to create, and to build. Yeah.
Okay. It sounds to me like an interesting part of your process there was what some of your own limitations would drive how you build your team, which only makes sense. Right. I guess I didn't give you that option. That's a good one. How about, have you got any particular common misconceptions? Because now that you've done multiple entrepreneurship journeys, misconceptions about small business or small business management that, some young entrepreneurs starting out, and you'd say to them, I don't think it's this. Anything that sticks out?
I will tell you something that I've learned is do is greater than talk. I'm in a Christian CEO peer group called C12. And our chair has a jacket that has that on it. And I'm telling you, there's nothing more truthful about that comment. There's a lot of businesses and entrepreneurs that want to be an entrepreneur, and they want people to know they're an entrepreneur, and they want to talk strategy, and they want to be philosophical about their business. But at some point, we have to go to work. And I think that there is it wasn't necessarily a misconception for me, but I didn't realize how many businesses, especially in our business, Bill, that over exaggerate their capabilities, that over exaggerate their past performance, that over exaggerate their team's capabilities. And so we're all in the business development. When we talk about it here, who's in business development, and the answer is we all are. But I was shocked to see when I started meeting with different companies is that they would say that they had all of these capabilities, and then we would get into a proposal and find out, oh no, they don't. And so one of the things that we've had to do is just be completely transparent with our partners. And if we don't think we can do it, we better tell you we can't do it now, rather than proving we can't do it when we get down to the most important time. So yeah, that's a lot. We could spend hours talking about how this industry operates, but from an entrepreneurial perspective, I see a lot of talk and I don't see as much do. And so that's a focus of ours, is we're action focused.
I don't know if you saw me, I couldn't help it, but when you said let's talk strategy, these guys, and I roll my eyes. I'm like, or I'm interviewing someone that wants to do strategy for the business or something, and I'm like, I tell you what, I've got the strategy. We need to do work. Like, I'm with you.
Yeah, at some point you have to go do the work. And I even talked to people in this industry that talked about, hey, I have gotten out of BD and now I'm overseeing a lot of BD people, and so now I'm not as much in BD anymore, and that's just shocking to me. You are even more in BD because you have the responsibility of leading and guiding your team of BD people, and so getting promoted doesn't mean that the work gets less. Being promoted means you have more work to do and more responsibility. And so, a lot of people have that misconception, and there's a lot of people too that start their businesses for freedom, and that's cool. I want to, and rather than working for somebody else, I want to work for myself. I completely respect that. But I think that those that want to do it as a lifestyle business, is that go do it. But if you're trying to scale and create value and create something that's bigger than yourself, then there's a lot of work that goes into it and a lot of hard decisions that go into it. And you just have to have people that are willing to do the work.
I guess I would add to that. I've been here at this company 19 years. I started as an employee, and I've done every job here. And my job is different almost every month, certainly every year. Yeah. And they're like, the stuff I do now, it has like, we're all in BD. I call myself kind of a BD CEO, but I do like this thing we're doing, when I never thought I would be chatting on, I don't know. It is amazing. So maybe the whole point is you don't always get to do what you want to do. You have to do what you have to do. And or you have to do whatever the business needs, because who else is going to do it? So there's a great, I'm sorry, their name escapes me at the moment, a charity that I support. Geez Louise, I'll have to put them on the thing for it, give them a shot. But their saying is, if not you, then who? And their references to veterans and military and support and all that. But that's kind of what an entrepreneur. Hey, if not you, then who? I don't care. Like, you don't have to be an engineer but you have to, if you have to dig in with those guys and pretend you know what you're talking about for a day,
somebody's got to do it.
Yeah,
one of our core values, Bill, is curiosity, and one of the reasons that we have that as one of our core values is that there's nobody. You don't walk in and they hand you an owner's manual, and we're hiring people, especially in the early days when we're hiring people. One of the things that would freak people out is they get here and they go, "Hey, where is our employee manual? Where's our employee handbook? We don't have one. We need to create one." Well, how do you do that? I don't know. We got to go figure it out. We had a contract that we had people in Afghanistan and Kuwait and Germany, and we had to get rental houses and rental cars. And, somebody asked me, well, how are we going to do that? And I'm like, we got to go figure it out. And so the curiosity piece of that is trying to figure things out. And, now we just chat GPT everything, Bill, but it's more than that. It's figuring things out in real time. And that's where, again, you fail a lot when you're trying to figure things out on your own, but you've just somebody's got to go start. And I think once you start and you start figuring things out and you look back and it's like, okay, now I have that experience, I can go do something else. But yeah, you have a lot of people, it's like the utility guys all standing over a hole, looking at the one guy in the hole digging. I think that, you don't want a team of all those people standing outside the hole. You want them all to have a shovel. Yep. And I think that's key in trying to be successful. And especially an industry that's as hard and as complex as our industry is.
You're going to end up in my end of year video, core value as curiosity. That's awesome. I think that's a miss on my part. I don't have that specifically as a core value, just that word. I think that's awesome. Good for you. Seriously.
Well, and it really comes out of, well, and again, I mentioned I'm a Lencioni fan, but hungry, humble, smart. But the hungry is drive. We've got that in our core. I'll just tell you, our core values, we have 4. They're easy: be driven, be curious, be humble, pursue excellence. So we try to keep it small. Pursue, you notice it was be this, be this, be this, pursue. Don't be excellent. I think that's really, nobody's ever going to just become or be excellent. I think pursuing excellence is the key there. But be humble, be curious, be driven.
Say it again. Yeah, say it again. Say them.
Be humble, be curious, be driven, pursue excellence. And when we were coming up with our core values, I wanted, first of all, it to be not just something, and I talk about it around here all the time. It's just not something we put on the wall or put on our website. We make all of our decisions through that. We hold people accountable through that. And so you have to have drive. That's hunger, right? And you have to want to get up out of bed in the morning and go. You've got to be curious and try to figure things out. Again, we don't have an assembly line that there's a training manual that you just have to plug this this screw into this hole. It's not that way. It's more complex than that. And a lot of times in our business, we figure out, hey, we don't know how to do something. And so, if we're all standing around trying to figure out how to do it, and you don't have anybody curious enough to go figure it out. And then humility that's just my personality. You've never arrived. And again, I mentioned it in the early discussions that we had. If somebody is the smartest person in the room and they want everybody to think that they're the smartest person in the room, they are not a good fit in this organization. I want everybody to deflect credit to the team and not to themselves. And the other side of that is coaching. And we go back to that too. If you're humble, you want coaching. If you're not, then you're just you're kind of turning your nose up at people saying, why are they coaching me? They don't know, how to coach me. And so you've got to have those. And then you top that all off, and it's really the overarching piece of pursuing excellence. Tom Peters, an author, said excellence is the next 5 minutes. And my team is going to laugh if this makes it into the podcast, because they hear me say it all the time, is excellence is the next 5 minutes. It's the next email. It's preparing for a meeting. It's doing the things that create excellence. Happens not just from, reaching a point to where you're like, okay, that was excellent. It is the pursuit of excellence that's the most important thing, and it's how you prepare for things. And so we really try to create that core value culture within the organization. And man, if you don't have humility, you stick out like a sore thumb here. If you're not pursuing excellence, you stick out. And we kind of are weird about it, and I'm proud of that. That we're so weird about our values. Somebody that joins us, they might think, man, these are crazy people in this organization. But that's fine with me. I don't mind being crazy about the things that we think are important.
It's obvious that you own that. Those, like, some companies have core values and they have a mission statement or whatever, but it's obvious that you own that and are passionate about that, and that gets into your culture and all that. So I would say that the number one advice I'd give to entrepreneurs right now is listen to the last minute and a half and be that, honestly. Yeah. And by the way, I answered the question what I would do if everything failed tomorrow. I'm going to come work for you. I got a lot to offer.
Well, we'll go do it together, man. Come on.
All right. That's
you
wow.
Try,
that's awesome.
I'll shoot.
Yeah, right. Good reference. All right. You want to talk a little bit about the industry for kicks and giggles?
Yeah, happy to.
Can you tell me what's going on? What the heck's going on?
No, I can't tell you what's going on. And if you find out, will you call me?
Yeah, sure.
I heard somebody say it the other day, is that we're removing fat, and in the process of removing fat, we're going to cut some muscle. And so that, and to build that muscle back is going to take some effort and some time. And so I'm trying to embrace that. And I think that you just have to know that what we're doing as a country, and trying to be more efficient and trying to, get the fat out of, and we all see it in our industry. We see it all the time. so I'm glad that we're doing it. I'm like everybody else, when you choose the chainsaw versus the scalpel, and so you can have the talking heads debate all of that. But at the end of the day, I think that things are going to settle back out. I think having contractors like us, you can fire us, and we know that. And again, talking about worrying about things at night, we know that we can be fired. I think that's an advantage that we bring, and also the agility to be able to come up with solutions is just easier in a smaller business than it is in a government agency, maybe. So I'm excited about what the future may hold, but there's a lot of cloudiness between here and there. And so, again, going back to making sure that you're preparing for the worst, we've gone through and looked at every one of our contracts. Is there an area where there's fat? Are we showing the customer where we've added value or where we've saved money? Are we giving them talking points to be able to talk to Doge or whoever might be coming in and questioning whether or not they're operating as efficiently as we can? We try to help with that. And so, if you can figure it out, you call me and tell me. But it's crazy.
No, that's good. Those are some very specific, like, good actions, things to be thinking and doing. 100%. I like that. I think. Do you delineate between small, whatever, it's all different sizes, small business versus mid-sized business versus large, I guess, in what the opportunity is there in this particular environment that we're having?
I think that I don't. I think that companies that can bring real solutions and efficiency and technology that is and I think the government is really made this abundantly clear, is that we're not going to create something unique just for this one customer that can't be repeated, can't be scaled, is going to take consultants and tons of staff to keep up. So, we're trying to look at opportunities of where there is a need for innovation and value, and making sure that those are the directions that we're going, rather than going to something that might, especially in the economy, and from an industry perspective where we are today, of just trying to chase where we think that margin might be the best or where the dollars might be the best. So it's really, when I said scalpel versus chainsaw earlier, we're targeting our new opportunities with a rifle rather than a shotgun. And so I think that's the difference maker. But I've talked to some of the large that are on the dreaded consultant list, and a lot of those folks that I've talked to have said, there's some fat there that needed to be cut. But just because it's a consulting business doesn't mean it's a consulting contract. There's real work going on in some of these contracts that I think that might sometimes appear as consulting that's really not. And so, it's just head on a swivel and making sure that we've taken care of the work that we have now, and that the work that we're pursuing is work that's going to be meaningful and stick around and fits with what the government is looking for today.
Well, I learned something from one of the other episodes. I don't think it might be out already, but that was one of those hot things I came up with. And it was, got this from a real senior government guy who was out at that point, but he said, what problem are you solving?
Yeah.
So for the government, what problem are you solving? And I think that's another one that I'm like, oh, really?
Great question.
Think about that. It's a great question. And like we talked about before we even jumped on this call, it's probably about a series of the best questions might help you get there. And I think that's one of them. Like it's, what are we doing on that contract? Are we just filling space, doing admin work that could be done? Can we replace ourselves with AI? And should we try to do that and convince, if you can't, there's some good questions to ask. I think it's a lot about, I agree with you. It's a lot about efficiency. It should always be, it should always be, but there's an impetus to be able to do it.
How many 5-year 1 + 4 or 5-year contracts do you see that get smaller in the out years? And so it is the way we approach delivering solutions to our government customer we can propose all day long, but if the customer doesn't buy it and buy into it, then you're talking to a wall. And so, having the government now starting to understand efficiency, understanding and not understanding it, but embracing it, and innovation and technology, I'm hoping that those companies that can offer solutions and can do, some of the real work that the government needs, those companies will see opportunities different than one that just says, hey, I just want to, I'm just going to bid work and staff it and hope it sticks around, and you're not really solving anything. And there's always, staffing is, we do staffing, and it's really important, but we're trying to, even in that role, we're trying to say, hey, what is the best position? Can you do it with one instead of two? You're asking for two, and for me, I'd much rather have two than one because it's more revenue. But what is the need? And so it creates a little different dialogue. But you're right. What problem are you solving? I really like that.
Well, let me finish with a statement and a question, and see what you think of it.
Okay.
My job has changed over the years. I'm not sure I always know exactly what my job is. I'm defining it as I go. But in this particular case, I would say that, putting aside maybe some of the things I actually do on a day-to-day basis, I think my job is about relationships with my employees, my customers, and my partners. And as the role that I have, what's your job?
My job is to make sure that our team knows where we're going. You've heard Jim Collins talk about good to great, you get the right people on the bus before you figure out where you're going. Somebody said in one of our offsites, because I said we need bus riders, we need people that are in the right seat, and he corrected me. He said, no, we need boat rowers. We need people that are, and it goes back to that work. We need people that are going to contribute, and so we need boat rowers. But using either one of those analogies, you're going somewhere. Well, where are you going? And so I think that my job, Bill, you and I've talked about this. We have 100 different jobs, but the most important thing that I bring every day is trying, and I'm not successful at this all the time, but trying to provide clarity of where we're going, and then allowing our smart people to figure out how to get there and how to do it successfully, and with the least amount of risk and so forth. But let them figure out how to get there. My job isn't how to get there. My job is to identify the destination, and then give them the tools and the resources and the training and everything that they need, and eliminate all the BS to make sure that they can get that done, and focusing all of our efforts towards that objective. Does it match that objective? No. Well, why are we doing it? And and it might be important, but it's not important to that objective, so it's not a priority. So I think that's probably, if I were to say what's my number one role, it is it's just trying to make sure that everybody truly understands the destination. And for us, that destination is our vision of making a meaningful impact on the safety and security of our nation. And so when we do that every day, and if our employees that are on the front lines understand how they fit into that vision, then I think we'll be successful. But they're not going to get it on their own or by reading my bio. They're going to get it by purposeful interaction and purposeful clarity, and then it starts with me.
Well, that is a great last word. Thank you, David, for spending the time. I really enjoyed it. It was great.
I'm impressed. Bill, I owe you congratulations. I don't think anybody in my office would ever believe that I would sit in the same chair for nearly 2 hours. This is an accomplishment for me, and I'm very proud of myself for sitting still for this long. So congratulations.